For Danny Gare to score his first goal. We're going to give him a little bit more than that to chow down. However, this is magic. This has been a magic day, a magic 4 hours. And for you lawyers, just a reminder, make sure you fill out your form so you can get your CLE credit. And I've been assured this will, in fact, happen, even though Ted Black raised some questions. This is the highlight part. This is an opportunity where we get to meet one of the truly great legends of Buffalo Sabres hockey. I grew up when they first came, 1970s, the Perreault, Rick Martin, Rene Robert, and Danny Gare time period. This is magic for me to have a chance to be in the same room with Danny Gare and for us to share a little bit of a conversation. Before we get started, I just wanted to show a little bit of a vignette. Danny, we violated a few copyright laws, so hopefully you will not mind.
Ask Mr. Black.
He left. Hell with him, he's gone. We don't care. So with that, we're going to dim the lights and kind of help put Danny Gare into perspective.
When you look at Danny's career as a Sabre, I mean, he was an original. He was a person that played with guts, determination, fought if he had to, scored when he could, and it was very good in all of those different aspects. He was a great player.
He had a burning desire inside himself to be the best player he could be, and he wanted to go out and prove it every night, and I think he had a great career.
I think a lot of it stemmed from when I was a youngster growing up in Nelson, British Columbia. My father played the game, and he was my mentor in the game, and he told me when I was around 13 years old that one of the things that I'm going to have to do if I have any chance of becoming a better player and maybe, getting to the National Hockey League was I had to learn how to box or fight. Whether it was working out, 3 times a week or shooting 200 or 300 pucks a day, or just the fact that you were determined enough to not only make that commitment, but making sure that, you were improving every time you did those things. And I think that was part of his mentorship for me.
When you think of him and his family and how they've grown up and what they've become, you can see where it all started with his folks, with his mother and his father. And, that primarily what I remember more than anything. He had a solid upbringing. He had the courage to step in as a young person, both at the junior level and the NHL level, and knock him dead. That's what he did.
There's not too many players that I got an opportunity to grow up and idolize and then get a chance to play with. But I had that pleasure with Danny.
Wasn't a big guy, but he had a big heart. He stuck up for his teammates. He played hard for his teammates.
He was a leader on the ice, off the ice, in the dressing room. He was tough, and there was no question about how tough he was. I mean, physically tough, would play through pain. He was the best captain I've ever played for, and as tough a guy pound for pound as there was in the National Hockey League.
Boy, it's nice to see that was in color. Most of those are in black and white. It's true. I was at a sponsorship golf tournament the other day, and everybody had colored pictures but me. I said to the PR department, I said, what, you got no colored pictures of me when I played? But anyways, those a few moons ago, but those were great days.
Well, they are great days. You know, I in anticipation of today, A couple of your former teammates, Derek Smith and Terry Martin, sent me a note and said there was a guy named Danny Gare, when he was a bachelor, shared a house with you, and they insisted that they take turns cooking, but they weren't any gourmet chefs in the making. Instead, they were highly visible to young women in the Buffalo metropolitan area. Wouldn't be this is I don't know if it was Derek or Terry, I'm not sure. It wouldn't be fair to say that we were living life in some kind of fast lane. They were hockey players first, but they had the kind of fun that young bachelors did then and do today. And they talked about you as being the most energetic in the quest for new friends, nearly all female. I don't know why they sent me this, but he said that as a result of your willingness to introduce yourself, they said you would meet girls and you would always promise them special items for the upcoming games, and then the rest would follow. You want to talk about how you got your nickname Tickets?
That would be one of them. When I met girls, yeah. It's interesting to say that because we used to frequent a place called Mulligan's out in Buffalo on Hurdle Avenue, and always a nice place to go after a win, and enjoyed it very much, and had a few pops now and then. And actually Derek's wife, Trixie as we call her, Diane, worked there, and Derek married her, and so did Terry's wife. So it happened to be a place of getting together, and unfortunately my wife didn't work there, and she's no longer my wife. But anyways, maybe that was the clue. But no, I used to give tickets away when I'd had a couple drinks to pretty girls, and what would happen is they would end up standing up at the ticket box office, and I'd only be allowed at home. You only got 2 tickets, so I'd be grabbing, asking older guys for tickets here, tickets there, which was a no-no. And then finally, Punch Imlach came up to Larry Carrier, who also kind of took care of us single guys, and said, "What's this crap with Gare going on? He's got all these girls up here looking for tickets, and I'm tired of giving away all these tickets to Gare's girlfriends." And he said, "Well, it was tickets here, tickets there." So that's how. That, and one other story that I'll add to it, is that I first came to Vancouver after playing out in Calgary and junior. I was drafted by the team, Sabres. I told all my friends back in Nelson, British Columbia, a little town, if I make the pros, first game in Vancouver, you can all come. I'll take care of the tickets. 8 busloads came. It cost me $4,382. So it was tickets here, tickets there.
Beautiful.
That's the nickname.
You talked about Calgary, playing there. You, at the time, and it's kind of forgotten in the dustbin of history, that there was an alternate league.
Yeah.
And you were drafted by Winnipeg, as I recall.
Yep. The
And
WHA.
how did you end up in? Talk us through that.
Played my junior in Calgary. I had a great 3 years there. Left home at 16, 19. It was difficult leaving home at the time because, as you saw on the pictures here, it was a large family. My father, really, he used to play hockey. He was a former player. They actually went to training camp the same year as Tim Horton did, the late Tim Horton in Toronto. But sisters were figure skaters, brothers played hockey, so we were a skating family. And in a little town like that, you get a lot of opportunity. I was saying to a couple of gentlemen here today, I remember opening up your arena here in Jamestown. What a beautiful arena. You have facility for young kids to play and girls to figure skate to enjoy. And very similar upbringing. Worked very hard at what I wanted to do. But as I got to Calgary, it was tough because I left home, and at 16 you live with 3 or 4 guys in a billet, and you're away from traveling a lot in buses, and ended up scoring 10 goals my first year junior, 44 my second, and I broke the record with 68 my last year. And it drafted me along with 268 penalty minutes, which was the most ever by a right winger. So when I talked about fighting, like boxing, my dad, that's when the Broad Street Bullies were around, the Big Bad Bruins. That was part of the game, unfortunately, at the time. I never really enjoyed fighting, but it was something that gave me room to do what I had to do, and that was score goals. But the WHA came in that year, which was the World Hockey Association. They drafted me. John Ferguson, the late John Ferguson, was the GM. He played with Canadians for many years. Drafted me in the 3rd round. The Sabres drafted me in the 2nd round. So always wanted to play in the NHL. Punch Imlach flew out to sign me to a contract to Calgary on Father's Day. I'll never forget it, in '74. Watched the team the year before getting thanked by the fans in the crowd. Thank you, Sabres. Thank you, Sabres. I said, I want to play for that team. I want to play for the Buffalo Sabres. So the rest is pretty much history.
So Punch Imlach came all the way
Out to Calgary. He was very concerned that I was going to sign with the Winnipeg Jets, the rival league, and there were a lot of players that were moving, because it really raised the bar as far as the dollars were concerned. We finally got an opportunity. Signing bonuses were bigger, longer-term contracts, bigger money, and it really helped a lot of players as far as, getting more dollars as they came out of the draft year. Even players that went on, like Dudley left here to go to Cincinnati. There were a number of players that moved on to play in the WHA. But my goal was to play in the NHL from day one. So Punch found that. The numbers were fairly close, and that's where the decision was made.
Apparently, you had a signing bonus of $50,000.
$150,000.
Oh, $150,000.
It was a lot of money back then.
And what did your mother tell you to do with that?
It was a Sunday, obviously, when Punch flew out. It was Father's Day. And I flew into Calgary to meet him, signed this contract, and I had a check for $150,000. I was 19 years old. And I said, after Punch left to fly back to Toronto, and then into Buffalo, I was waiting in the airport, and I was thinking, gee, it'd be nice to go for a beer. They didn't have any money, just this check. So my mom, I called her up and I said, Mom, Dad were there. They were all excited about it. And don't you lose that check. Don't you lose that check. So I brought it back, and, that was pretty much it.
Did you get your beer?
When I got home. Yeah.
Well, you deserved it. You walk into the Sabres training camp that first time, and there are some folks like Gilbert Perreault, Rick Martin, Jim Schoenfeld. What was your reaction?
I was in awe, actually. To me, watching playing, against players that you watch for a while, and even when my first year when I played, like to score against Bobby Orr, that first goal was like, geez, maybe I belong here. I don't know, but I was groomed enough, I think, in the juniors and in minor hockey to prepare for that. And when I first saw Pro and Martin, like I said, I saw him in the lobby of a hotel room in St. Catharines, because that's where we trained, and I was like, wow, I almost wanted their autograph. I was going to say, and I said, no, don't do that. That'd be stupid. So, but they were great guys. They were just guys that, were regular guys and nothing major. And I'll never forget Shoney. I got hit first scrimmage I had. He just drilled me, like behind the net, hard, and I went down hard. And all I could see him looking up like this is his big red head, looking down at me, grabbed me, he says, welcome to the league, kid. So I was glad I was on Shoney's side and not playing against him.
You've also talked about your first exhibition game against the Flyers.
Yeah.
Setting the stage, Kate Smith was singing and all that stuff. Talk a little bit about your buddy Dave Schultz.
Well, Dave Schultz his nickname was the Hammer, and he was the leading penalty minute player, I think, in the last 3 or 4 years, and they had the quote-unquote Broad Street Bullies. So here I am, a little kid from Western Canada coming in, and they had just won the Cup the year before against the Bruins, and I remember going in there. I couldn't sleep. We stayed across the street. Bed was soaking wet with perspiration. I was so nervous and anxious. And so I go over to the rink about 4 o'clock, and I see a couple of the trainers there, Rip Simonik, the trainer that's been there since inception. And he says, "What, are you nervous, kid?" I said, "Yeah, I bet I'm nervous." I said, "I'm trying to make this team." And he said, "You'll be all right." He said, "Just get in the fight early and you'll be fine." So it was like, okay. So here we line up against, there was Schultz, Selesky, and Clark. There was Luce, Ramsey, and myself. And there's a 19,000 screaming idiots in Philadelphia, and as they always were. And Kate Smith had just sang, and it was like, wow, this is, so I got to do something. So I go down, the first shift puck goes into their end, so I run Schultz as hard as I can, and the crowd goes, whoa, you hear him. So puck comes back out, they get control and moves back out into our zone, and I knew he was coming after. I could smell his breath on my back. And I went left real quickly, and he went right like a fool into the boards, and it was like, whoa, this isn't good. And the crowd doubly are going, whoa. So who's this little guy? So we come up in the middle of the ice, and we had a bench clearing. He jumped me, and the bench is cleared. Like, they jumped, and it was like benches were cleared where guys were fighting, scrambling. Dudley was fighting, Shoney. So I could get through it. I got through my fight with him. But the best was after it was over, it was like, he's going to the penalty box. Hey, you little fart. He goes, who are you? New tough guy for the Sabres? I said, yeah, you big goof. You got a problem with that? So actually, it went on and on and on. It went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. I fought him about 5 times that year, and it was back and forth. Hey, you little shit, Yeah, you big idiot, But it was funny until he came to our team. He actually got traded to our team late in my time in Buffalo, and I was a captain before I left to go to Detroit. He comes in the room and punch traded for him, and I'm going, oh, Schultz. He goes, I said, you want to go again, or you just want to shake hands and welcome? I says, I'd much rather just shake your hand. He goes, and I said, well, welcome to the team. So he played with us for about 4 or 5. Great guy. I mean, I never knew he was such a nice guy. I wouldn't have had many fights with him. But that's the way it was back then.
Your first goal. Talk about that. It was the Bruins.
Yeah, it was another thing that was very excitable. Boston Bruins were in town. Don Cherry was the head coach, the new head coach. Bobby Orr. We line up against Esposito, Cashman, and Hodge, and puck came around corner, and Shoney took a shot and hit Cheevers' pads. I got the rebound and popped it in the net. And it was like, wow, well, that was easy. Wow, it's in the net. And Bobby Orr, I remember, went between his legs. He smashed. We beat him like 7-3 that night, and we went on that year to have 113 points. And it was just kept going and going and going. And I was runner-up, I think, for Rookie of the Year. We went to the finals. It was just a lot of great things that happened to our team that year and this organization. I mean, it just seemed to catapult down the road, I think, for a number of years.
There's a quote attributed to you. Sometimes we would get fog in a rink where we were practicing, but I never recall it happening during an NHL game. You really couldn't see more than 30 or 40 feet at times. It must have been hell for the goalies. Talk about that infamous fog game of May 20th, 1975.
Well, I don't know if people, I'm sure a lot of you recalled when that happened. It was late May, as Greg said, and it was hotter than heck outside. It was like 90 degrees, and I'll never forget, my parents and brothers and sisters came down from BC, and they were laying out by the pool at the condo where I was renting at the time, and that's how warm it was. So back in the days, you didn't have the dehumidification or any of that type of stuff put into the arenas, and we noticed it in the morning skate that it was starting to get a little, foggy from the skating and the ice, the coldness of the ice. But boy, we never really could fathom how bad it would be until the game, got going, and then it was just, you couldn't see. And I remember these guys used to come out with sheets, and they thought that and they couldn't even skate, these guys. They were like the rink rats. And like they were trying to go around, half of them were tripping over these sheets, because if they thought the sheets would be like a filter that would maybe cut the fog, I don't know what the idea was, but it was very comical. And we would skate around every, whatever, it's 2 minutes, and so would the Flyers, to try to, because it would eventually try to lift some of the fog and the density of it up. And then they kept playing the game, which they had to, and we had the infamous bat that was hit, and then also Rene scoring in overtime. So it turned out all right. The difference with that series that I've always felt was we never won a game in Philadelphia. We were close, 3-2 one game. And when you get to a finals like that, there's certain people that I think make a difference, and their goaltender, Bernie Perron, who won the Conn Smythe, the most valuable player, was the most valuable player.
You've been described as a person who has a quick wrist shot and status as a small yet scrappy and fearless player. Is that Danny Gare?
When I played, yeah, that's what I had to do. I'm not like that off the ice. I don't. I like to, enjoy my family and whatever. But I think at the time, us little guys, you had to be quick, you had to be fast, you had to be, scrappy, if you want to call it, pugilistic. That was part of getting room, and in the game today, it's a lot different. I mean, you can have small players, but there's only one fighter in each game. Like, I remember going into the Boston Garden playing, and there used to be Secord, Jonathan, Cashman, Schmatz, Wensink. I mean, I could go on. There'd be 8, 9 guys. Philadelphia had the same. Islanders. This is the way the game was set up. So if, in order for you not only to be a goal scorer, you also had to take care of yourself. And not a lot of goal scorers would fight like I did, but that was what I was taught at a young age, and that helped me get to where I had to be at the time. And trust me, I look at the game now, I think it's a much more, I enjoyed it playing it. When I played it, it was exciting, it was fast, but this game today is much quicker, much more skilled as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think fighting should be in the game anymore. I think it's passé. I think when you have an enforcer fighting one enforcer, whether it's staged, whether it's, to me, I think that has moved on in the game. I just don't see that as part of the game. When I played, it was different. You had 10 guys that knew how to fight, and 10 guys that knew how to score, and 10 guys that could dominate at any given time. And as far as an enforcer, not taking away from what they've done, you see with the 3 of them dying this summer over certain issues there were 3 players in Canada that played in the NHL, and it's a sad state of affairs as far as I'm concerned, where the league is taking this. And to me, I would abolish fighting altogether right now. I don't think it's part of the game.
Were there times, Danny, when Punch or any of the coaches would say, Danny, why don't you just talk about staged fights? Just take a run at somebody?
I think that was more on my side of it. As a player, one of the things that I had to do as a captain was to lead by example. And I think when you looked at whether it was either to protect another player or to initiate momentum or make an adjustment to try to get fans on you or you get your team going, whether it was a goal or a shot or a hit, but fights could do that. Yeah, they definitely could change momentum.
You were such a prolific goal scorer to, at the same time, be an enforcer / pugilist. There's always the fear of major penalties and Danny Gare being lost for that opportunity. Unlike maybe, I don't want to use Rob Ray's name, but I'll use it, who maybe not had the same goal talents.
Well, again, I think it's relative in times as they change in any sport. You see different games changing. And I think part of it was less and less fighters as the game went on, and more skill was part of the game that the league wanted and people wanted. And I agree totally with that. I think that's the way this game is, such an artful game. It doesn't have to be into the backwoods of brawling and fighting and stage fights and so forth. I think this game is too good for that right now. But Razor was a great fighter. Come on, the guy had over 3,000 penalties. That's not a fun thing to do. Going to work every day and having to think you got to beat up somebody is not a fun thing to do. Trust me, I did that. And I think the again, getting back to the understanding of what the product is that you want free-flowing, great passing, great skill. You want more ballet on ice rather than goons on ice is what I'm saying. And I think that brings out more of the product of the game. And I just see they're close to it, but they just want to keep hanging on to that last little bit of, we need to have fighting. We need to have 1 or 2. I don't understand it. I just don't get it.
You were on a line with Don Luce and Craig Ramsey.
Yeah.
And the always, every year, that mark that everybody sought was possibly getting 50 goals. You achieved that for the first time in 1976.
It's my second year, yeah,
Second year.
75, 76.
And that time period also, Rick Martin was gunning for his 50th as well. It came down ultimately to one of the last games, and kind of a great story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was kind of ironic because Richard was a really prolific goal scorer, and he didn't fight much. He didn't have to fight. He was on the French Connection. They were the line. They were the line that got all the power play opportunities, all the opportunities to get more ice time. I was on a checking line. I checked with Don Luce and Craig Ramsey. That was part of our role. But I also was a scorer, and I felt I could do both. I did that in junior. I mean, I told you what I scored in junior. I can score goals, and I remember telling Craig and Donnie this the first time we met, was they were more of slotted as checkers. I was a goal scorer, but I was trying to make the team, so any position I could do and play in order to make that team, I would do. But during that course, that time and that period, when you have time with your line mates, you see tendencies, you see reaction, you see understand of what you can do together as a line. And Luce and Ramsey were great 2-on-1 guys. They would go down low, they would turn over pucks, and I would look out, be in the slot area, be open. And we checked mostly the top lines. And most of those top lines, whether it was Toronto's Sittlers and McDonald's or the Espositos in Boston or the Clarks in Philadelphia, they always zoomed and left the zone. They were always cheating, is my point. Because that's why top lines do. They look for the offense to go the other way. So if we could turn the puck over and have those odd man situations down low, I could score goals if I got the opportunity. So in saying that, my point is that was why our line was so effective. I mean, and it came down to the last game of the season when Richard had 49 and I had 47, and it was against the Leafs, a team that we all hated. It was at home in the odd. And I just never really thought about 50 goals. I mean, you're 47 until, I think it was Freddie Stanfield, the veteran, said, you know what, Danny, you may never get this close again, So I go line up against Sittler, Lanny McDonald, and on my side was the wonderful Tiger Williams, who was one of the toughest guys in the league and played against him in junior. And he says, you're not even going to get a sniff, Gare, tonight. And he starts swearing at me or something, and I says, it just got me mad. It got me real mad. So I played, and Rico went at it. The first period, nothing happened. I think we were up 1-0. But then I got one in the second period, and it was now 48. Rico had 49. So now I'm getting power play time in the third period because people wanted both of us to score. And I got 49 on a deflection from one of Richard's shots, which went over the top shelf into the net, so we're both tied. And then the last one I scored with about 10 minutes to go in the game and got 50, which was amazing. And unfortunately, Richard didn't get it, but he assisted on all three of those goals. So I mentioned that at Richard's eulogy about what and I miss him so much. He was such a great man and a great scorer, but he said, Danny, don't worry about it. We'll do it again together someday. And it never really happened. I mean, I went on to score 56 and 80, 79, 80, and he got traded in 78, I think. But he had done it 2 or 3 times, so it's not like he was missing out. But he was one of the best I've ever seen as far as shooting and scoring.
So to conclude this story, what'd you say to Tiger Williams?
So after I got the 50-goal puck in my hand, I said, hey, Tiger, you wimp, you little pussy, that's 50. And I flipped the puck, and he started to scream and yell and then swear at me again. I said, it's too late now, it's 50.
He's not here.
No.
Let's drop a couple of names and give me a reaction. Let's talk about Gilbert Perreault. What's he mean to Danny Gare?
Gilles Perreault, to me, was, You saw Wayne Gretzky on there talking about, and I played with Wayne in '87 when I retired, and played with him in 2 Canada Cups, All-Star. They were 6-week-long tournaments up in Montreal. But he lived in Brantford, Ontario, and not far from Buffalo, maybe an hour and a half. Grew up. He loved the Sabres. He grew up, and his favorite player was Gilbert Perreault. He used to tell me, I was at his fantasy camp 2 years ago in Vegas, and we talked about Gilbert. It was his ability to just dazzle people with his great moves, his skating, his ability to, he skated better with the puck than without it. It was amazing how his moves, his lateral movements, just a super nice guy. And I tell this story about Gilbert, which is funny, because my very first year, my father would always send me letters and say, Danny, he says, the area you got to improve upon now, he said, now that you're in the league, is in order to beat defensemen, you have to learn moves, like you have to deke left and go right, or left, or go the opposite way. And I said, yeah, but, you know, he says, I said, how am I going to learn that? He goes, well, talk to Joe Perreault. He's the best at it. Get him after practice someday. So this is my first couple months in the league, and I'm going to ask Joe Perreault about deking. I mean, you know, feel like I should ask for his autograph. Like I said earlier, I'm not even ready for it. So finally, around February, I'd had a few goals, and I asked Gilbert after practice. I said, Gilbert, excuse me, would you mind maybe helping me, you know, on deking or how you can make your moves? Would you mind spending a few minutes after practice? This is after, or spend some time with me after practice. He goes, in his French accents, Danny, I don't know how I do them. I just do them. I says, well, keep on doing them. Thanks. And that was it. So I told my dad that. He says, oh, well, you're going to have to work on your own then, I guess. I don't know how I do them. I just do them. But a great man, Gilbert.
Rick Martin, you were at it. I know you spoke at his eulogy.
Yeah.
What was your reflection?
Richard was a prolific goal scorer. He was so into his tool of trade, his stick. You know, a lot of people golf. They have certain ways they, you know, grips they use or whatever. But he was into sticks like I've never seen anybody in my life before. I mean, I like my stick as my tool because we would hook them certain ways. You know, some of them, the flex wouldn't be enough. The length sometimes wouldn't come properly. But what he did, he took me to Victoriaville where they made our sticks, where they manufactured them. And I'll never forget, we were in Montreal one day, and he, being a Montreal-born kid, says, Danny, let's take a ride one day. And I said, where are we going? He says, well, we're going to check our sticks out. And we went about an hour and a half away to Victoriaville to the stick company. And I remember going through the whole manufacturing plant and seeing how they put the ash together and how the wood was put together and so forth and so on. And then we came to probably the most important part, which was my part, which was his same thing was a little French guy curving the stick. Like they would do it on like a bandsaw where it would be beveled and they would curve. And every curve was different, and you never really got the same curve, you know, every time, even though these are sticks that are patented for you and they put your name on it and all that, which is cool shit. But it was like, it was like your curve, if it was the right curve all the time, and the right flex was important. So he did all of this for me, and I remember him telling the guy, we want to shave it here at the toe. His hook was a little different than mine. Mine was more of a heel to toe. His was from about midsection to toe. I remember getting the sticks, and you know, you used to get a dozen of sticks. It was like Christmas. You know, you'd get them maybe every 2 months. Now these guys got these composite sticks and all. It's like totally different. So you would always flex and feel, and you knew exactly which sticks were the good ones. So you'd grab maybe 4 or 5, and you'd put G on it for game sticks, and you put those over on the side. You never use those, very seldom in practice, ever. And then you'd flex some more, and then maybe you get another 4. That'll be practice, and you may have to use those in a game if you don't have enough sticks, because they didn't order them all the time like they do now. And then the other ones you just send back to the company. But I'll never forget, Rico doing that for me, and then being so helpful as far as just the mannerisms and the mechanics of shooting. We would shoot hundreds and hundreds of pucks every day before practice. He would tell me why he did this, why he did that. Just a good mentor and one of the best natural goal scorers I've ever seen.
Rene Robert.
Rennie was a little different. Rennie came a little later. Rennie was a great playmaker. He understood the game very well. He played the point on the power play, which was very effective. He could fight a little more. He probably fought the most of the three. Very competitive player, and they all just gelled. They were all French, so the connection worked, I guess. Yeah.
I was told to ask, what do you think of Mike Powers?
Mike Powers, is he in the room?
Now you can talk.
No, Mike's a good friend. Known him a lot. I know if I ever need an attorney in any regard, I can go to him. But he's been a good personal friend for a long time.
Well, I thank Mike and you for coming down.
My pleasure, Greg. And thanks for inviting me. This has been a very educational scene on the behalf of myself, knowing that Ted Black is such a great comedian. I've never noticed that before. I've enjoyed that. So next time I go to negotiate a contract with him, I'm going to tell him a few jokes and tell him my number's in the bathroom. And really let him know that Pittsburgh, I hated going to Pittsburgh, okay? For so much, I'm happier to see that the Pittsburgh people came here to buy the Sabres. I think that is important. I'll tell you a story about when I went to Pittsburgh, and I was playing in the old Igloo in the Pittsburgh arena. It's called the Igloo. And they had a pretty tough team. They had some guys there that Pronovo, Sil Apps was there. They had those old powder blue uniforms, but they didn't play that way. They were a tough team. And I'll never forget, we were winning 5-2. We always won there, but they were always type of a tough team that was always trying to prove themselves. They eventually did later with Mario Lemieux. But when I played there was a guy named Steve Durbano, and I was 5-2 this late game. We were up in Pittsburgh, and he speared me right in the stomach. So I'm like really upset. And he's 6'2", 6'3", and he's got the same kind of helmet that I wore. I call it the bubble helmet because it helped me when I fought guys. It would hit the top of my helmet. So here's what happens. We start fighting, and I'm up against the glass, and I'm trying to get at him any way I can. So, you know, he's trying to hit me, and there's people and all of the other guys on the ice watching. So I grab for his helmet, get the helmet off. Good, got the helmet off. Now I can go for his hair. So I get his hair like this, and I go, whoa. I thought I ripped his head off. He had a toupee on. And it was like time stood still. It was the best fight I ever had. It was like he looked at it, I looked at it. He looked at it, I looked at it. Players are going, ah! People in the crowd are laughing. He grabs it out of my hand, sticks it on his head, and skates off the ice. So I go, you know, oh, this is cool. And then the referee goes, no, Gare, I don't know what to give you. I said, well, what? He says, I don't know, I'll give you 5 minutes for rug pulling or toupee tugging. I'm not sure. I said, just get me off the ice, all right? So, but it is great to see guys like, you know, obviously Mr. Pagula, who has come in here, and Ted that has come in, and I have not. I said this on the broadcast, first game when they were in Europe, and on the pregame show, I said, I have not seen the buzz or the excitement of what this gentleman and this new organization has done in the off season, from spending over $100 million on player contracts total. I mean, I'm not talking just about free agents. Myers, they signed a number of different players that were ready for contracts. Stafford, Sakara. They put 10, 15 million into a dressing room. They buy the Rochester Americans. Like, I couldn't remember anything like this in the 41 years since probably the Sabres were first bought by Seymour Knox and Nordy Knox. And when they lifted the roof off the old Odd and redid the auditorium, and then drafted to the franchise Gilbert Pro. I have not seen that type of excitement and buzz, and it's great to see. And as a player, you love that. You love to go to the rink like I did and wanted to play for the Knox family. Certainly gives you high expectations as a player, which I think is expected anyways. I think that's what you should have, is high expectations as a player. Now, and they've had a bit of an up and down start, and it's early, but now it's up to the players to deliver. So we'll see what happens.
Speaking of delivering, we watched a clip early on today of Rick Jeanneret,
Yeah.
sort of that top shelf DVD. You got a chance to work with him.
Yeah, definitely.
What's RJ like?
Amazing individual. When I retired, I took courses on enunciation, vocabulary courses, English language courses at UB, but he was the best teacher of all. I mean, he can do a New York Times crossword puzzle in about 15 minutes. That's the Sunday edition, the hard one. But his inflection is amazing. His calls are amazing. A lot of it's just, off the top of his head. I'll tell you the one that, I'll tell you two stories that you like. We were just moving, or we were going into Madison Square, and I was doing radio at this time with Rick. And this is when he was doing radio, just retired, and learning a lot about the business of broadcast. So we go in the gallery gods. They were working on the press box in Madison Square Gardens. And so we're in this upper area, blue area, and they had like just a piece of plywood there. And here we are getting ready to do the game. We do the game, and he's always just has one sheet to line up, and it's blowing up because he can't see. He's blind. So you can see the names of the numbers of each player. I've got notes everywhere. I got notes here, notes down here. I got them all over the place. But I happen to have a monitor, too, which was kind of nice, a black and white monitor. And there was a goal that was scored by Mogilny, and people stood up. I didn't see the goal. So I'm looking over at the monitor. I'm going, now watch how Turgeon goes wide. Now see how he looks for Mogilny. Now watch how Mogilny. So, and we're on radio. So he goes, they can't see. Okay, watch, see, look, they can't see. But that was a story, and then I also talk about his greatness of his calls, like the Mayday call. I was there in the booth when Pat LaFontaine was traded, a little booth in the auditorium. It was about the size of this stage. When Patty scored his first goal as a Sabre, he goes like this to myself, and Barry Butel was the other radio guy. He puts his arms like this, like, shut up. Like, don't say a word. So I'm going, what the heck's this all about? He never does this. La 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 Fontaine. I almost fell out of the box when he said that. But just a consummate professional. We'll miss him a lot when he goes. I hope he stays on for as long as he can. I'm going to be working my first game actually Saturday night in Ottawa with Kevin Sylvester, as they give him a little time off with Harry throughout the year. So I'm looking forward to that and excited about that. So
How do you prep for a game?
I watch a lot of hockey. I mean, I watch hockey all the time. I think preparation is hearing and listening to other color analysts on the teams that I'm up against. Like, I've probably watched Ottawa 6 times in the last 3 weeks. Trying to get in depth on their players. Also talking when you go into the team in the morning skate, you talk to players in regards to what their thoughts are, opposition players, coaches. I mean, sometimes it's, you can't get enough information, but you only have so much time to put in, so you try to, in my booklet that I use is primarily the points I think that it will tell a better storyline. And from there, you just, wing it sometimes and see how the game flows, and you pick apart what you think should help, with the way the flow of the game's going.
At some point, the Sabres trade you
Yeah.
to the Red Wings for, I think it was Foligno and was it Brent Peterson?
Brent Peterson, Dale McCourt, yeah, and Shoney. It was not a fun day, trust me. That was not a good year, let's put it that way. And my father just passed away, Lou Gehrig's disease, unfortunately. And I'd just been redoing my house. I was getting married. A lot of things that were going on. Not fun time, but I think what you do, you learn from it. I became Illich's first captain the next year, Mike Illich, who still owns a team. I was very proud of that, and we made the playoffs 3 years in a row and got them going in the right direction, I think. So, you know, twists and turns.
You spent 1 year with Gretzky.
My last year, yeah. It was a very, very exciting year. I played and lived with him for about 2 months before my family came, and hung out and sat next to Mark Messier and got to befriend him and guys like Kevin Lowe and Paul Coffey and so forth. It's just a great way for me to finish my career, I think. And unfortunately, my back gave out in mid-March and I had to retire. But I was there they wanted to give me a ring, and I said, nah, I don't deserve it unless I'm on the cup. And today I would have been in the new rules of the quote NHL, but they were just excellent players. They were guys that when they won the cup, you know, pictures with it, you know, they wanted us to go to the parade and all that. But it was a great feeling and a great way to leave the game.
Did you sit on a bench and watch Gretzky and go, wow?
I did, yeah. I mean, his father was Walter, who I know very well. In fact, I'm going to see him next week. His father was his mentor, obviously, and taught him in the rinks in the backyard up in Brantford, and when he played on rinks, indoor rinks, he would say, don't follow the puck, go where it ends up. And he just would drill that into Wayne over and over. And everybody would say, well, why is the puck always with Wayne? Because when you really look at the arena and how it's shaped, it's like a pool table. And there's angles. And if you play a puck off an angle, that's what his dad taught him. Like, if it goes in here, the puck's going to end up over here. If you shoot it here, it's going to go there. So Wayne, instead of following the puck, he'd go over there, and the puck would end up at him on a stick. And people say, how the hell's that happen? Well, he was taught at a very, very young age. And that I think, with Wayne's gifted talent, it just, you know, blossomed throughout years. A great passer, great team person, great ambassador. Pisses me off he's not in the league today.
Yeah. If you
for
had,
some reason.
Yeah. If you had to start with a team and you had a selection of anybody for goalie, Hasek or Ryan Miller?
Ooh. That's a tough one. I think I'd probably just give the nod right now to Hasek, only because I haven't seen Ryan's greatness yet. We're looking for it. I mean, we've seen a lot of it, but you've got to win a round or 2 or 3 or 4 before I can put him in that category. And no disrespect to Ryan, what he's done.
We got time for just a couple questions. Anybody have any specific questions for Danny?
Yes.
Bruce.
You talked earlier about lines in hockey, and I'm kind of an old school guy when it comes to hockey. The French Connection and your line, you know, as a checking line. And when you think of teams in the 60s and 70s, you mentioned a team, you knew who their top line was.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. Is that the result of overcoaching?
Some. I think that there are some lines. You see more 2 players together now rather than 3. Like you see Getzlaf and Perry together from Anaheim. They were the top 2. You see Spezza in Ottawa, I'm thinking, and McCulloch, he's there. You see Vanek and Pominville. Now I see Lindy's putting Leno in the middle there to try to get him going. But, yeah, you don't see all 3 sticking together, you're right, as much in the past. And I think that comes with, you know, normally there's 2 guys now, and then they'll take one off to give another guy an opportunity to get his confidence or whatever, or to fit in. But that's a good question, good point.
Another question? Yes.
Yeah, Dave, excuse me. We used to get in this segment with my brother all the time. But is it ever a thought that maybe, you know, the 80-game schedule, that you would play at the beginning of the season, every other game, the goalies, for, like, say, the first 20 games? Because then, you know, it's only a quarter of the season, and now, because Miller's been wore out both years, this year and
Yeah.
last year, in
Yeah.
the playoffs. I mean,
Well, they have a legitimate backup now. I don't think they've had that in 2 or 3 years. Personally, I think this kid Enroth is the real deal. I think that he now has the luxury of sitting down Miller, but I think that's another one of those coaching moves, is to not discount your number one guy and not, get him ticked off because the other guy's playing. But that's, to me, is competition. I liked it, whatever's playing, and we used to have this when we played. If you win, you stay in the lineup until you lose. Play until you lose. I mean, that's what players want to do. They want to show that they're capable of playing and being in the National Hockey League. So I know there's a lot of give and take sometimes with some of these kids that think they're entitled. There's a little bit of entitlement that I see in players because of the money. And maybe it's not all their fault. Maybe it's the way the system has been set up. But, all the perks that they have and the number of things. It's just an older player seeing some of what's happening to the younger players. And I think, again, some of the old-time hockey, abides with new-time hockey, whether if you win, keep that guy in there till he loses. But in your point, saying that some of them should have more in the early part of the season, I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
What's your highlight, Dan?
My highlight?
Yep. Other than being here tonight.
Oh, this has been outstanding. Although I do have to get home. I have pick up my granddaughter at 4:30, but we'll be all right. My highlight, I don't know. I had a few highlights. We mentioned them. The first goal, the 50th goals. As far as pro sports goes, those were highlights.
Well, you were also an two-time All-Star. You also were in the Buffalo Sabres Hall of Fame in 1994. And for those folks, there are only 6 numbers that have been retired by the Buffalo Sabres.
That was a highlight, yeah.
Danny Gare's one of them.
Getting my number retired was very, very, very exciting. I had my mother, my family, some of my aunts and uncles from out west. We played the Rangers that night, and my brother-in-law was coaching the team for the Rangers, Tom Rennie. He now coaches the Oilers, Edmonton. But it went to a shootout, and I remember Larry Quinn saying, "What game do you want?" I said, "Well, I want it against the Rangers, and my brother-in-law's coaching." So and it went to damn shootout, and Yager scored and beat us in the shootout. But that's to get your number retired, I think is. I'm not in the NHL Hockey Hall of Fame, which is fine. It was a great career and so forth and so on. But there's 600 in that, and there's only 114 numbers retired. So pretty happy with that, yeah. It's nice to see it up there.
Well, we're pretty happy you were here today to really highlight an incredible day dealing with the Buffalo Sabres.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Don't leave, please. We're going to draw for those wonderful prizes. If you can hold on just a moment. Okay. The first drawing is going to be from the DFT table. It's for 2 tickets to the Bills-Dolphin game on December 18th. And it is Tom Buttaferro from St. Bonaventure University. Hey, Tom. Now we're going to, okay, we're going to do the gift certificate for the Hometown Grill right here in Jamestown. And Chuck Hall. It's great. Wonderful food. The next is the Game Time Sports Bar and Grill. A great gift certificate. And it is Ashley Smith. Here you go, Chuck. Wait a minute, how about the Sabres tickets? Are we doing yours? Okay, next is that beautiful Merit wine basket, and it's going to Bruce Whitechair. There he is. Yay. Well, this is a good time to start winning. And then we do have 2 sets of 2 tickets to the Sabres game November 18th. And the first 2 tickets are going to Craig Hart from Hamlin Bank. And the other set of tickets is going to John Ortendahl. Great. I know he's still here. So thank you everybody so much for being here today, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the spring.
Megan, you're in this?
And then, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you for having me, Randy. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Pleasure. Joel. I need that. See you. Lisa. Thank you so much for your time. Don't leave. I have